Today, I'm thrilled to welcome back a friend for her second time on the podcast. She's a longtime singer-songwriter and worship leader whose music has drawn many towards hope and healing. In our last conversation, we talked about her tough battle with Lyme disease and her faithful journey in healing. Now, we're discussing her new book and how that faith, resilience, and deep trust that shaped her story can help you. This is the story of Sacred Surrender with Jaime Jamgochian. Jaime, so nice to have you on. So good to see you.
Hi, Casper. Podcast number 2.
I was going to say, I looked up when number 1 was because my memory has kind of, it's been a while. And our first time this published was February 4th, 2021, almost 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So, it's been 5 years since that time. I don't feel like everyone remembers everything in those 5 years.
Totally. I don't even.
And you wrote about it in the book quite a bit about your healing journey and your battle with Lyme. Can you give us a little bit of the recap of what brought you into the world of kind of healing, medicine, health, even biohacking you do now and all these things? Can you give us that?
Yeah. Well, the synopsis battled with some health challenges as a child, and now I can look back and see the patterns. Migraines as a young girl, no one should have to deal with that. Mono, that just took me out. My peers in college got through mono really quick, and it just took me out. Tonsillitis all the time, strep throat. So there were just these signs that something was not right. But the flip side is that I loved life, and I loved this thing called music that I believe God has given me to keep me vibrant and alive at times. And so I was this happy, fulfilled child, but sickly in some ways, which, maybe one day I'll get a better synopsis as what really caused all that, because I do believe it's all connected, right? Emotionally, spiritually, physically. And finally, I hit my crash and burn. I was at the height of my career. I had gotten a record deal. I was traveling the world for about 12 years, loving it, loving the international trips, loving singing songs of hope, which is what I felt God put in my heart at 21, just sing songs of hope. And I hit a season in 2019 where I had no hope because my body just wouldn't function. And we're talking about headaches that, morphine at the ER wouldn't touch, and the strongest pharmaceuticals I've ever tried in my life wouldn't even touch it. It came to be through your clinic, NYCIM. I found out it was neurological Lyme disease, which makes so much sense now. And I'm guessing I got bit as a child and just didn't even know. And I think a lot of the patterns of health in my life probably came from that infection that was never dealt with. I remember having strange fevers here and there as a child, just odd things. And that was my crash and burn moment. And I remember at my lowest of lows, I had to move out of my beautiful condo that I had just finally gotten the interiors done the way I loved. And for those of you who are into that, that can take a while for you to get it where you really want it. I remember having to leave my touring, leave a beautiful position I had here in Nashville serving people, and move home in my early 40s to live with my parents. Talk about a hard, humbling season for someone who's, been independent, traveled the world doing what you love, selling music and whatnot. And they had to care for me. And it was in that season that I had to fight for hope. I had to fight for healing. I had to use some tools that I now have the honor of helping other patients with. As you know, you've given me that opportunity. And I found you guys. I found Dr. Schultz. I found a center that really knew how to treat the whole body, mind, body, soul, spirit. And we got to the roots of some things. We got that infection out. And that was the beginning of my healing journey. And in 2020, when our world was crashing down, I was just coming alive again. And God was so kind to see fit to open up a new season of music and travel, and now a brand new book that just released a few months ago called Sacred Surrender, the practice of waiting well with God. So that's it in a little short story.
No, that's a wonderful synopsis of that. And, in our first podcast, we really focused on faith and healing and how your faith really guided you through it. And, in this book, you call it Sacred Surrender, there's a lot of this idea of you must surrender in some ways, right, with
Yeah.
God, and surrender your problems and issues. And in some ways, it makes complete sense in
Yeah.
relationships, careers, right? But
Hmm.
you talk about in sickness, where you say sometimes you got to fight. It's a war, it's a
Yeah.
battle against Lyme and
Yeah.
cancer, all these other things. How do you place surrender and sickness together? What is your way of telling others in this moment where you're dealing with this issue that is body, mind, spirit? How
Yeah.
does one surrender in there?
Yeah. I think I remember reading this quote actually from you, Casper. So I can't take credit
Mm,
for this. And it's actually in a song of mine called Release that I think would bless anybody that is in a tough season right now. There's a quote that says, "Surrender is the path to peace, or the path
mm,
of peace." And I find the more that we control, which is the opposite of surrender, the more that we try to cling to something, hold on to something, try to make it work in our way, in our timing, even society, what society says should happen at this age or that. The more we can let go, the more we can release, the more we can open hand, open heart, truly surrender our will. Now, for me, my faith, as you know, is in God, is in the Lord Jesus. Somebody else might place that surrender somewhere else, but I'm going to surrender that unto the Lord. And what that does is it lifts. It lifts the burden. It lifts the anxiety. It lifts the fear. And I'm no longer putting that on myself, but I'm putting that on the one that I've come to know, trust, his heart, his character, his promises, who he is. And so I think what it does is it shifts your entire mindset. It shifts your entire heart posture to this place of, even though this is hard, even though this makes no sense in the natural, I actually believe, God, that you're doing something I can't see, and you're working this together. There's a scripture that says that God can work all things together for our good. So I put my faith and my hope in those kinds of things, and I live open-handed, surrendered to him. And then I get to sit back and rest in that and really watch what he does. And I did get my healing. Did it come the way I thought? No. And we can talk about that. But it was that posture of surrender, I believe, that began the healing process.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about that because I'm sure people are listening and probably going through their own maybe possible health issues or something else that they're going through, and they're thinking, what is my plan here? Is it just surrender and sit back and do nothing while, a disease kind of takes over my life? And this could go on for years. This
Absolutely.
isn't just the headache or so that you hope will go away in the next few hours. This is something day in and day out. You may live, have good days sometimes, but sometimes much worse days. So how does one go about it where you say you have a plan A and sometimes God has a plan B? How do you kind of navigate? Do you really create a plan A? Do you just go with the flow of where God wants you to go through this disease? How would you give that advice to someone?
I love that you just said that. Chapter 5, when your plan B is God's plan A.
Yeah.
And I've seen this time and time in other areas of my life. So many areas where you want a certain guy, or you want a certain label to sign you, or you want a certain whatever. And in that moment, you are like calling down heaven, God, I just know this is it. And he's up there going, not your will, daughter, my will be done. I see things you don't see. And so I think it's just learning that God is good. He's faithful. And so even when we go through hard things, which we will, we live in a broken world. There's sickness, there's disease, there's chaos, there's hatred. Look at our world right now. There's so many devastating things going on, right? When we posture our hearts in a place, though, of saying, this is what's going on around me, but I'm putting my faith and my hope in something bigger than myself. I think that is where healing really begins. I had to know that I know, God, you can heal me. Now, I don't know the path of how you're going to heal me, but I know you can do it. He led me to a center that was so beyond anything I had ever heard of. We talked about this in the last podcast. I thought you guys were voodoo out there, all the things, kind of crunchy and crazy. And now I'm one of those crunchy crazies, you know. But it took faith. It took faith in that step to get to you guys. It took faith in believing on my worst days that, you know what, today maybe all I can do is crawl out of bed. And that's enough. And tomorrow, maybe I'll get to go take a sunset walk, and that's enough. And that's what I want to encourage people with, is taking the next step. What is the next thing your heart, your intuition, your discernment is telling you to do? Even if it sounds crazy, do it, and then take the next step. And I think that's the process of healing that we all walk through, whether it's emotional healing, physical healing, spiritual healing. So I would encourage somebody, wherever they're at today listening, to ask God or whoever they put their trust in, what is my next step in my healing journey? And take that next step. I know it sounds simple, but I think having been sick, we can get in this depressive lower state where we just want to lay around all day. We want to binge our favorite movie if we can even watch TV. There are days I couldn't even, the light would have been too much from the TV. So you get in this lowered, lazy kind of, I'm just going to lay here until something changes. But when you can really shift that, I think is when you begin to see the healing, because I believe our bodies were designed to be healed. And I had to stand on that. That's a biblical truth, but I think anybody can really stand on that. We were created to be healthy and whole people.
Absolutely. And I do think, you talked about this and you just said it, that sometimes you're in those days where, a step is very difficult to take, an actual physical step, I'm saying, right? And in those moments, maybe that step is something as simple as just a positive thought. Maybe that is something as visualizing yourself doing something that you know you'll do when you are healed and healthy.
Yes.
And I mean, you brought this up in the book, and I could do this because I'm sure Ben would not worry about his name being out there, but you talk about sitting next to in the center, somebody that, had given you hope about their journey through it. And of course, his whole thing was when he was down in the dumps, he just said, like, just start with a deep breath. If I could just take this deep breath, that is one step.
Yeah.
So I think people usually get caught up in this idea that, hey, in healing, you need these like giant leaps of, okay, today I'm going to lift a lot of weight or, go run a marathon next week or something. When the reality is that in each small little step is a great, great win. But, we're not always programmed that way. And I do find it's very easy to get in this state of why me? Right? When you're in that state, and it's very easy, I think, for us to sit here in a better state and tell everyone, don't be in that state.
Yeah.
But you were in that state for a while. I'm sure that tested your faith.
Oh, yeah.
What are those tips on that day where even Netflix would be too much for you?
Yeah.
How did you still encompass this area, this, profound faith that kept pushing you forward? Because I want people to hear it, because I know it's easier said than done.
Yeah, you mentioned it, and there's a chapter on this titled "The Thoughts We Think." And I remember very early on when I knew something's not right, and I could tell. I'm a natural, positive, cup is half full kind of person, but I could tell that was really starting to shift. And when you don't feel good for a long time, man, does that wear on you? And we could talk more on that, but I believe the enemy wants to even use that to try to take people out with depression and then suicidal thoughts and all of that. So the first thing I felt led to do, and as a believer, like you sense things from the Lord, and I sensed very early on the Lord telling me, Jamie, watch your thoughts, guard your thoughts. There's a scripture in the Bible that talks about renewing our mind. And I even remember walking into your dad's office, and there was a quote that said, think on things that are noble, praiseworthy, trustworthy, and true. And that's right out of somewhere, don't quote me, somewhere in the Bible. And I remember thinking, okay, I got to get a hold of my thought life because I'm going down to some dark places really, really quickly. And thoughts of this is the new normal, thoughts of you'll never travel again, you'll never do what you feel like you were created to do again, you'll never get married, who's going to want to date you now, all these negative, you're the sick girl, like just negative thoughts that I would say were from the pit of hell, just demonic and not what my Heavenly Father would be speaking over me. And I'm glad I had enough wisdom and discernment to say, this is not a God thought. This is not at all what God speaks. So I had to renew my mind. And in that season, it was hard to read because of the headaches and everything. Everything felt like a challenge. So I had to go back to my toolbox of a few scriptures that I had learned and memorized the last 20 years of my life. And I would just recite those, and I would recite them out loud. And I think if you're really going through it, sometimes you need to hear your voice speaking out loud a truth and let that hit your own heart. So I would say simple verses like, I trust in the Lord with all of my heart. I lean not on my own understanding, but in all my ways I acknowledge you, because it says that you're going to direct my steps. And I would just repeat that over. God, you promise you're going to direct my steps. And what happens is the word of God doesn't come back void. So that life, that truth begins to transform you. And so, a little bit of hope, a little bit starts to rise, just a little bit to get me through that hour. And then maybe I start getting in a funk again and I start going down that spiral again, like we all do at times. And so then again, I'm like, okay, Jeremiah 29:11. I remember that one. God says he has good plans for my life. Well, this doesn't look good, but God, you say you have good plans to give me a hope and a future. So this is why, as someone who's in Christian music, I think it's so important to know the word of God, because there's so much truth in it that helps us to overcome. Some might call it self-help. Some might call it something else. To me, it's the word of God that has helped me to overcome in so many areas. You know, I was on vacation with a girlfriend, one of my besties. I think it was last summer or the summer before, when I was writing this book. We were at this gorgeous beach. I talk about it in the book. We got to watch what comes out of our mouth. And we're having so much fun. We're getting ready to go to the beach for the day, putting on our swimsuits and our hats. And, and I must have said something a few times out loud because it caught her attention. And she was a good friend and she called me out on it. She said, why are you being so negative? You look amazing. What's going on? And I guess I was, girls, oh, my bikini, oh, my this, my that, I'm getting older. Things are changing. And she called me out on it. And I realized that night I had to renew my mind in some areas of, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. This is, God, I am beautiful. And I think a lot of women, as we get into our 40s and later, can relate to that. But it's a daily choice of renewing our mind, of putting truth into it. And so that would be my first practical tip. Watch the thoughts you think. The second thing would be what's coming out of your mouth, because what comes out of your mouth determines what's really in your heart. And I have people take a test. I think it's the end of chapter 7. I say, if you can, take an hour or two out of your day and record yourself. Just put your voice memo on. See what's really coming out of your mouth in conversations. Is it positive? Is it life-giving? Is it truth? Or is it negative? And then if you need to go and do some course correction, that is a great way. Are you always saying, I'm just so tired all the time. I'm just so this. Oh, it's never going to work out. Oh, da, da, da. That's a really good indication that your heart needs some healing. I call it inner healing. I call it liberty, freedom. And there's tools in the book of how you can open up your heart to really bring it into a state of freedom and fullness.
Yeah, you have this great quote in the book. God has given us the authority over our minds to guard our thoughts and meditate on things above, right? That's precisely what you're talking about. You go into our 60,000 or so thoughts, every single day, an abundance of them likely in somewhat of a negative tone towards ourselves, towards others, which is usually a reflection of what we don't like in ourselves, right? Yeah.
When we're critical of ourselves, we're critical of others. Absolutely.
Right. And then, I tie it back into some other things I was reading and picking up on is this idea, when you first get any sort of, bad diagnosis or something, you jump into learning all about it. You started going probably WebMD, what is Lyme? Oh my God, this person got this. And you start to go into the fear spiral, right? and suddenly your thoughts because of this information.
Yeah.
But then there are people that say, well, of course I had to research, right? Do your own research, find out things.
Right.
Where do you find that balance of being able to
Right.
say, yes, I want to learn more about myself, what may be
Right.
going on, but I also don't want to keep inflicting all these negative thoughts
Right.
into me that are leading me to a worse
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, that's so good, because there was an element of I needed to learn what is Lyme disease, what is Epstein-Barr,
Right.
what is parasite, all the things, Ehrlichia. I mean, I remember getting a list of things like, what is Borrelia? Am I going to die? All of this stuff. And you go to that place, and I think that's normal. That's natural. I'm not
Yes.
saying to be some super spiro that never is in reality. I think got to live in reality. I think it's balance with anything in life. If it's going to spiral you, if you're on those WebMDs and Googles hour after hour chasing down that rabbit hole, and you feel yourself going into fear, going into hopelessness, a dark place, you got to shut that off immediately. You got to ask a friend, hey, will you do a little research for me? Will you tell me the things I need to know? Not the things that are going to spiral me down. Find a doctor that you trust. That doctor I know is going to say to you, please don't spend hours on WebMD. Please don't even do that. Even recently, I was with a new friend, and he wanted to tell me all about his sister's husband that died from Lyme disease. And I had to stop him. And as someone he knew that had recently overcome Lyme, I had to say, I'm in such a good place, but this is starting to freak me out a little bit, all these details.
Yep.
And I said, I'm so sorry. My heart, compassion, I'm empathetic, but can we change the conversation? Because Casper, it was beginning to pull me down to, gosh, what if I turn 50 and I flare up and I have a heart attack from this, and all of the things. So I think it's just being practical and using wisdom and knowing what you can handle and what you can't. I'm a sensitive soul. I'm a creative. I'm a songwriter, by profession. So I feel all the feels with everything. So I have to be super, super careful guarding what I watch, what I hear, what I put in. Even recently, with all of the holistic people I follow now on Instagram, it can sometimes get to be even too much, because then you're thinking, do I have that parasite? Do I have that? Sometimes you just got to mute it all and say, you know what? I'm going to live my life. I'm going to go do the things that give me life. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to follow the protocol I've been asked to follow and trust that that doctor knows exactly what I need. My biggest tip would be live fully, even in the empty places. Even if you're sick today, what is one thing you can do? I remember the one thing that brought me joy that I could do. It was later in the day, so the sun wasn't too bright. This is when I was really sick. I would get up. Sometimes my mom had to help me, which is super humbling, but honestly was a bonding time for us that I'll never get again. And we would sit out on the front step, and for 20 minutes, we would watch the sunset. And we would talk about positive things, about when I'd go on dates again, about special days that we'll, in special moments, would have together one day and share. And we would make sure in those 20 minutes, we didn't talk about how much pain I was in. We didn't talk about how this center might not work, and we've taken this big step of faith. We would talk about the things that we believed we were going to get to do on the other side of healing. And I would love to encourage somebody today who's really depressed or sick or just in a funk, if you could take 10 minutes out of your day and do something that brings you life, and during that time, speak out loud the things that you can't wait to do again. Because Casper, because we're friends, I'm living in so many of those prayers, promises, things that I never thought I'd get to do again. I remember on our last podcast, one of the things I would visualize is when I'm better, I can't wait to hike. I was a new hiker when I got sick. So it was like, oh, I found this new thing I love, and now I can't do it. And you were like my first hike after our podcast. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm like well enough to hike again. And, maybe that's a goal for someone listening today, that they can't wait to get out and hike again. And I would say, write that down, dream into that, visualize it, pray into it. Let that be something that keeps you going on your darkest day.
You know, you're so right with this, Jamie, because I speak to so many people too, and I speak to so many people that are going through hard times and have disease and have Lyme disease and all sorts of complex chronic conditions, and it seems sort of hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that it's a wrong thing to feel hopeless because it's natural. We
Right.
all do. Not a single one of us would get a diagnosis and be like, I am hopeful and I am
Yeah.
full of positivity 1 minute after getting it. No, that's not natural. But I think it's so, so important to have some sort of a positive goal in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't, you're not working to anything. And what I find is most people that don't have a positive goal, whether it's hiking, getting a new job, seeing, your granddaughter or something grow up, whatever that is, usually fall into always trying to find a magic bullet, right?
Wow.
Always trying to say, have you ever heard of this new medicine? Have you ever tried this new therapy coming out with
Yep.
huge promise to what I have, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed those people jump from one thing to the
Yeah.
other without any set of goal and kind of stick in there, oh, I must always just be this disease. That's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And how important was it for you to kind of see past the diagnosis and really just focus on the healing and not trying to do as much of that research and jumping? Because I remember you weren't even like coming, hey, I want you guys to do this therapy on me. You were like, hey, whatever it takes, just put me in, do the voodoo,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
And I
isn't
think
that a
some of
big
that
part of
was
it?
good. I think some of that was good that I was green, naive.
Yeah.
I'm now working with you guys, have learned like exactly what BAH is. I mean, I thought in my mind that these doctors were taking that blood and scrolling it through all these lab tests and all, I mean, I had this whole thing. I think you've just got to kind of blindly trust. What I trusted was the patients that had gotten on the other
Of course.
side, the
Yeah.
Bens, the Heathers, these
Yeah.
testimonies. I knew if God could do it for Heather and Ben, he could do it for me. He's no respecter of persons. He's got favor for
Yeah.
everyone, healing for everyone. So that's what kept me going. And that's what I love helping patients with now. It's like, yes, I remember doing all that treatment at the center. And you know what? I didn't feel great right away. If
Right.
anything, there's moments as you know that you might feel worse because your body is getting rid of toxins and years worth of stuff you've held on to, and you're releasing that. And so it's an honor to sit with people right where they're at and just say, you got to keep going. Don't give up now. You're like 6 months out of treatment. You're going to have that switch. For me, it was about the 9 to 12 month marker. I'll never forget starting to ride my bike again and doing these sunset bike rides when I realized, oh my gosh, I've just gone 30 minutes. I've just gone an hour out in nature. Oh my gosh, I ate gluten again and I feel pretty good, like all the weird things, right?
Right.
And you'll slowly start to see that change. But I think mindset is crucial. I think for anything in life, your job, your healing, we were just talking about relationships, like prior to this mindset, right? It's just so important. There's a quote, and I don't want to get it wrong, but like what you think determines the course of your life, basically. And so I think especially in healing, this isn't a name it and claim it. I don't believe in that. This isn't fake patty positivity. But I do think there has to be something in your heart that believes that you can be well. And that is how I've seen the most success, even with patients I've gotten to work with now through you guys, are the ones that have even had just a glimmer, a tiny mustard seed of faith that I will be well. Those are
That's
the
right.
ones that have a turnaround. If you come in, oh, it's just going to be the next center that I try. Oh, it's just going to be. No, you got to somehow change that either with counseling or pastoral care or through your
Yeah.
faith or something to get you kind of in that better mindset, I believe. And for me, we've talked about this. I don't know how people don't do it without the word of God. That's where I have found my comfort, strength, hope. But for somebody else, it might look different. I would
Yeah.
just say dive into whatever that thing is and allow it to really bring you to that place. The other tip that I think really does help with what we're talking about is community. One of
Mm.
the hardest things when you're sick is you want to isolate. Naturally, you don't feel good. I mean, when you have a pounding headache and you're getting skinnier than skinnier because you don't want to eat, and sound bothers you, and noise and smells, and I mean, everything just sets you off. The last thing you want to do is sit in a room with people and chat and be fake happy, right? But I do think it's important to have a few close people in your life that can be that community and that source of strength and that source of comfort and hope. We were never meant to do life alone, even if it's just one, somebody that's helping you through, somebody who's cheering you on, somebody who's crying with you. So I had a friend who would laugh their way through this with me. Even when I didn't want to laugh, we would laugh about funny things, and that helps. So I would say community is also another tip of how to really navigate going from sick to whole and healthy.
It's massively important. I'm so glad you bring that up. You wrote about in the book, the people you keep around you kind of dictates your own end. People all say that you're the, sum of the five people around you, whether it's financial, your attitudes, everything. That's quite true. And I will say, if you find yourself in that state of disease, despair, or anything, and you're finding it hard to, you look at your community and it has somehow become a very negative one of, your friends have all become jaded or telling you you're never going to get better. I
Yeah.
was sick too. I just need medication. It's just going to get worse, right? I think this is where that idea of going back into something like religion or congregation or something, because I know so many people that were in a place where they were hopeless and they found that through religion, right?
Yeah.
They found that
Yeah.
through the people. Even if you yourself have a hard time being a truly religious person in the beginning, and there are a lot of those people, right?
Yeah.
I think
And
just being around that and feeling the love, because so many of those religion, that's the foundation of it, right? It's
yeah.
positivity. It's
Yeah.
love. You go into a church and you hear stories of inspiration and you hear beautiful tales of overcoming and miracles and everything.
Yeah.
It's really important, even if you feel bad, to just go into that community. You might be scared. You might feel like you'd be ostracized. You likely won't. It's probably what you need to do. Because I
Yeah.
think you wrote that in here that, growth requires us to take a hard look at what is working and what is not. And that hard look often means you have to do things you're not comfortable with. Do you have any personal stories of like where you were going through healing and it was just really tough to embrace something that you had to?
Yeah, I do. I remember, I think I took on too much and I learned that valuable lesson about how we were never created, especially as females, as the feminine, we were never created to go, 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 go. I used to buy into the whole boss babe thing,
Yeah.
independent, single, successful woman. And I'm not saying that's bad. I mean, you do you, right? But for me personally, I had taken on too much in that season, and I was traveling and I had a full-time job ministering to people, and I was not taking care of my own soul and
Mm.
spirit enough. And that plays into our health. And I don't ever want to get to that place again. Even with a demanding schedule now, I have to take those steps back. I have to do the things that fill me up still, which is great community. I don't think you need, lots and lots and lots of friends, but
Yeah.
even if you've got that core who really know you and you can just be yourself and they're not going to judge you. And I think that is so important, Casper. We live in such a selfie Instagram. I'm guilty. I'm trying to build my own, Instagram, but it's so self-focused. I
Yeah.
think healing comes when we get outside of inward looking, outside of ourselves, and start helping other people and being invested in your purpose, in your calling, in other people's lives. And I know for me, that was where the real switch,
Mm.
even in my healing, happened, was when I stopped focusing on, I never used my Lyme disease. That just didn't resonate with me. But, I'd say I'm experiencing health
Hmm.
challenges. I'm experiencing the effects of being bit from, but looking outside of my own self and onto others is what really helped bring some of the breakthrough for myself. And I think it's helped a lot of others that I know on this journey. And so that would be something that I would encourage people with. But yeah, I had to take a look at that season and how busy it is. And when I got my healing, I had to say no to some things, and I couldn't do it all anymore. I can volunteer maybe and do things in a certain way, but I can't tour and do that and do this. I'm gonna spread myself too thin. So learning to say no was a big lesson for me in that season of healing and coming into health, and not being a people pleaser. I think I've noticed a pattern with people that deal with similar chronic illnesses as Lyme, whether it's Lyme or something else. We all tend to have a few similar patterns. I've just noticed this. We're typically sensitive souls. We feel a lot. If you're a Christian, you're typically very in tune with God and the Lord and the things of God. I've noticed we're typically very hard on ourselves for some reason. I've noticed that. I've also noticed we can be people pleasers, and we really want everyone to like us, and we want everyone to be happy and everyone to get along. And man, I had to let go of all of that and be okay with people not liking me, be okay with not being able to show up all the time for everybody. Those are some lessons of how to even work on that sensitivity and some emotional resilience, and not letting every little thing hit me so hard, or take me out. So I think, the more you start pulling back this onion, we call it, the healing is not linear. There's the ups and the downs. The more you start pulling it back and doing some work, I call it the more whole, the more free you really become. Who I am today versus who I was even prior to having experienced Lyme. I'm a different person because of what I've had to walk through in that journey, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I would encourage anyone listening today, maybe God's trying to get at some bigger things through disease. Let him do that. Let him work it for good in your life as well.
I definitely feel that that's a huge part of it when people say, how could you see any positivity in sickness or anything? I think it's just a calling for change. It's a calling to evolve to something higher. It's getting you so uncomfortable that you have no other choice but to stop, pause, and change, right? And through that change, healing, and then an evolution, and, happiness and success can come then. But what you said there was really interesting, because we've both spoken to so many Lyme patients, and I've spoken to so many patients, and there are patterns. Obviously, it doesn't mean, hey, you got to be sensitive or you can't get Lyme. No. Yeah. But it's really interesting that there are patterns to these things, to different diseases. Even when you talk about, I've talked to experts about, feeling entrapment is a lot of MS related, multiple sclerosis, and all these things you could kind of link back to it. But it's very interesting that you're seeing that in yourself and others. And in that, there must be lessons, right? There must be lessons to say no, to be more, able to not try and people please.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that in doing that, you have felt more free, healthier in those lessons? Because obviously, this isn't just about going to find the right doctor and finding the right medical approach. There's a lot of responsibility and actions one must take themselves in the healing journey. Was that a big one for you to say, hey, stop people pleasing? And did that propel you forward?
Yes, I call us unicorns. So I think we're special, just so you know. I'm not slamming anyone. I think we're the unicorns of the world, and we need us. And we're typically the authors and the songwriters and the, inventing things, all that. But yeah, I'm still working on it to this day. We all have positive traits to our personalities, and those traits that we want to work on and we want to get stronger and overcome, I think. But I do think when you go through a life-altering either disease or moment or loss, it could be a business, it could be anything. I think the best thing you can do is take that step back, what I mentioned in the book, and say, what is working and what is not working? What do I need to learn from this situation to grow, to be a better human, to be better for the world, to offer the world more, to be better for, if you're married, your spouse, your family, your friends, your loved ones, your children, your job, your coworkers. God, like I would say, God, what can I take from this season, from this lesson that you entrusted me with? You know, I have a chapter that says when hard becomes holy. And that was the hardest season of my life, but I can look back and now say that was the most sacred, holiest season. It was so special. I hope I never have to go through something like that again. But right. There's things in that season I'm not sure I'll ever get to experience again on a spirit level with God, entering into a suffering season, entering into what it means to really hope when you have zero hope. So I would say take that moment, take that life crisis, take that sickness, and really see what you can learn from and grow from. So one of those things for me is, I can't worry about what people think. I can't worry about if my Instagram looks perfect or not. I can't worry about if someone thinks I'm this or that. Who cares? You know what I mean? Like, am I living for them or am I living for the Lord and what he thinks? And that for me is my number one. And then he's going to surround me with the right people and the right team and the right situations and the right opportunities. I love saying this, like, stay in your lane, stay in what God has gifted you to do. I think when trouble comes, it's when we start comparing or trying to be like someone else, or we get a little jealous or we get a little envious that our timetable and our timeline doesn't look like their timeline. What if instead of doing that, we were just grateful that, like, this is where I am today. This is where I'm supposed to be. Like, sure, most of my peers are married. Most of them are on like baby number 3. I'm just hoping to adopt one. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But what if I'm grateful for the years that I've gotten to do the things that were in my heart to do, the calling, the career, the rich friendships, the family that God entrusted to me, because maybe he knew I was going to be single a little longer. Like, flip the narrative is what I love to help patients do, because you hear a lot of that, you know, like, oh, Jamie, but I'm 52 now and I'm sick again and I can't work and I got divorced because of my sickness. There's real life stuff, Casper, right? So I'm not out here saying, oh, just, you know, but I'm saying, wow, you get another chance now. You get another chance at 52 to rewrite the story. You know, I have a song called Beautiful Story, to see God write a beautiful story in your life. And it takes work. This is a lot of inner work. This isn't for the faint of heart. But I think if you do it, you're going to be one of those people that, you know, walk by and you're like, man, she's got a lot of joy. Man, he's got a lot of peace. Wow, right. He's free. That's the kind of life I desire to live. So it's taken being okay with people not liking me. It's taken being confident, saying no. It's taking not caring. If I make the right decision and I feel like God's on it, then that's what matters.
Yeah, it's really a superpower to be able to take any situation and put a positive spin to it. The natural reaction is to, my world is over. This is, you know, the worst ever. I can't believe it. Oh my God, you know, this is just terrible. That's the natural reaction, but be able to step back, take a deep breath, and in a somewhat quick manner, turn it into a positive. Yeah. And it's not easy. It is a muscle you have to work out quite a bit to get there. But aside from faith, aside from, you know, your kind of connection to God, what are some, because you're talking to people from all different backgrounds here, and you talk to a lot of patients. Your story, I know, has been so inspirational, helped so many. And in turn, they reach out to you and say, hey, James, like you said, I'm in your situation like you were. What can I do? Because I don't yet maybe have that connection, that faith or anything. What do you tell them when you start to hear these people and you hear, you know, I'm 52, I can't do this, and you are this, you know, hugely positive person, but they're like, I just can't do it like you, Jamie. Because I feel you could give them great advice. Yeah.
Well, besides telling them to read my book, no, just kidding. Maybe we can have...
is a great start.
No, yes. I would have them do some inventory, Casper. I would have them take a hard look at their life, because if they want to stay where they're at, then great. We can talk till we're exhausted and blue in the face about all the things that are going wrong, but we're not making any progress, right?
Right.
I would say, I've more love, less fear. We hear this all the time. I would say we've got to get you into more of a place of love and more of a place of acceptance and more of a place of joy and peace. And how do we do that for you? It might not be through the Lord. To me, the Lord is who gives me the joy. But what is it to you? You mentioned it earlier. I worked with a mother who I adored, and she'd been to your center many times, and we finally got her a good place. And the thing that helped her, she didn't have a relationship with the Lord, but the thing that helped her was we got her why. Her why was for her daughters who were about to be teenagers. She wanted to see them live. She wanted to be at their wedding. She wanted to go wedding dress shopping with them one day. She wanted to be alive and well and present for her girls. And when we got that switch in her mind, man, did her attitude change. Progress began because she had her why. And I think we all need that. I would say to anybody, like, why are you doing this? Like, I've even told people not to go to your center. Don't hate me, but if they're not ready and they're just going to have all this financial, it's going to be expensive and you're not in the right headspace, don't go do that right now, because you're probably not going to have the outcome that you're hoping for until we can get your mindset and your why and why you want to be well. And so I would peel it all back to, why are you alive? Like, why are you living? What's your purpose? What do you feel you've been put on earth to do? Is it to be the best wife and mom? Is it to go rock the world in the finance? We have a mutual friend now who's just killing it on Wall Street, and like, she's way up, and she went through her own terrible health journey, but she wanted to see her job through, and she's a partner now of this big firm and has this gorgeous home in Long Island, and kind of got there and did it right. And that's what helped her keep moving forward. That was her why. And I would find what that thing is, and I would help that person. Let's figure it out together. If you don't know what it is, we'll figure it out together. Usually it's where passion and calling collide, where passion and skill collide is usually your calling. And so I would say, what are you good at? What do you enjoy? I remember one of our patients was just moping around all day, every day, and she was getting better. And I said, what do you love? She didn't need to work, but she needed to get out of the house. She needed to do something. She's like, I love flowers. I'm like, great. Go call 3 of your favorite flower shops this week. Why don't you get a part-time job? Get out of the house 10 hours a week. I think she joined a flower shop. I think that gave her more life than anything, just to be around people, to be around flowers and things she loved. I would have been sneezing 24/7, but she loved it, And so finding your why and finding the things that make you come alive. I know for you, you love your tennis, you love your hiking, your sunsets. Like, you'd probably live a pretty boring life if you were just in New York doing the 9 to 5 grind,
So boring. Yeah, right. And it's one of the reasons I love the book, and I told you this, is like, after each section, you had a place, a journal area to write in it. My affinity to writing. I love to write things. I remember being in New York City when I lived there and watching sunsets and always having my journal, my focus planner, and writing and then one person came to me one day and they're like, how's the book coming along? Because they noticed me out there. I'm like, oh, I'm not writing a book. She's like, then what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just writing things that come to me. She's like, people still do that? I was like, yes, and maybe you should too, because it's not easy to always find a why, and it's not an overnight, just one question thing.
No.
It may take some time. A lot of people seem that I find to not quite, because they don't know it right away, find themselves lost, right? Or if they take a detour on that why, let's say the lady called 3 places and they said, sorry, we just don't have any openings right now. And she stopped there and said, okay, well, that's it. It's not my why, I guess, because why would they say no, right? Sometimes it takes a little bit longer.
It
But I think
does.
through writing day in and day out and connecting to something, whether you call it God, universe, or, just the truth out there, some
Mm-hmm.
super conscious,
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll come to you. But
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe, and I love that section in writing about it through the words, through the introspection, through some sort of a connection, right? Doing it at times where you're outside, take a few deep breaths, feel that connection,
Mm-hmm.
that will come to you.
Yeah.
And that's necessary for healing. I'm sorry. It's just as important as every IV and procedure and therapy you got at the
Yeah.
center. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
If not more. I
Or,
mean, I'm
yeah.
all for, I love the detoxes. I love the way I feel after those IVs, but it's not life to be flying to a center every week and getting a detox IV, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
how do we live beyond that? And I think it's both, it's
Yes.
finding that sweet spot with both things. And I love when people start to get a little sassy for their healing, and I think I had to get a little gritty, and that's something I learned through the healing journey, was to have some grit, and to not take no for an answer with my healing. I'm like, no, we're gonna get there. And you taught me this, Casser. You become your own advocate.
Hmm.
You fight for your healing. And even I remember now being to a place where I could come to the center and say, guys, I think this might be going on. Can you test me? And they're like, wow, yeah. Because you become so in tune with what's going on that you're advocating for yourself. And I would share that with anyone that's going through it, is you keep going on your healing journey until you get your healing. And if you're working with people that don't believe you can be healed, go to another doctor, you
Yeah.
know,
It's a
because you
great
can
point.
be
You
healed.
can't be that passive observer, just
Hmm.
allowing things to just happen and not really taking your own actions and feeling it. And a lot of that comes. I don't know about you, and I'd love to hear this, but as you started to heal and things started to maybe clear up a little bit, did you find yourself being a little bit more intuitive? Find yourself maybe a little bit more heart-centered to say, hey, maybe we should let's check this out. Because I know most people, while they're in the depths of sickness, feel like they can't make a right decision about anything, what to wear, what
Yes.
to eat,
Oh,
anything.
oh, absolutely. And I do remember that time where it just took everything to get to my appointment. It took everything
Yeah.
to get to the center, give them my arm and say, do what you need to do. Put my earbuds in and listen to a song that brought me hope and faith on repeat for, like, some of those IVs might be 3 hours, and I just looped
Yeah.
it over and over and over again. Um, yeah, I definitely think it opened up the awareness of what is going on, even emotionally. Like, I'm much more aware now, like if I feel rejected in an area, how that affects my physical well-being. Or if when I'm overwhelmed or sad, I'll check in and be like, but what's causing this? And let's deal with that in the heart. And is it even real? I think sometimes we get upset over things that aren't even that big of a deal. And it's like, oh, okay, I probably made that a bigger situation than it is. And just checking in more, I think, is what the whole healing journey did, is checking in with myself more, being aware more. I think you really become a lot more self-aware after you go through a healing journey. Gratefulness was my super tool and a superpower now. Choosing gratitude. We're at the end of the year, and I don't know about you, I'm always one of those people that like get a word for the year and believe all these things are going to
Mm.
happen. There's some things that totally happened, and there's some things that didn't. And I can
Hmm.
either live in that place of frustration and like, oh, really, God, I really thought, da 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 da, or live in gratitude of, wow, look at what did happen this year, and look at like all the things that you allowed me to be part of. I'm going to focus on that instead of the one thing that didn't go the way that I had hoped. And so
Yes.
right here we are again, back to that mindset, and back to that. I think gratefulness and gratitude is a healer more than we even recognize. Waking up every
Yeah.
day and just out loud, I'll be like, 3 things I'm grateful for today before the day even starts. And at night, I love to jot down what worked and what kind of didn't work, even if it's
Yeah.
short, so that I can work on that for the next day.
I think that should be part of any treatment, right? When you
Wow.
start is to put that down, is to talk
Yeah.
about your why you want to get better, your
Mhm.
purpose, this and that. Every morning to write things down, right?
Mhm.
That you're grateful for, take introspection and see how your day went, what went well, what didn't. Do that every single day, right?
Yeah.
And it really is as simple as 5 minutes. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, some people, when you give them that, they kind of chuckle a little bit and say, okay, I'll do it. And they don't. And
Yeah.
I've noticed those people usually don't get the same results or not as quickly as
Right.
those that do buy into just doing those little things. It's the
Mhm.
little things in healing I've realized that means
Mhm.
so much more than
Yeah.
precisely the doctor or
Mhm.
precisely which, now that we're kind of at this stage where the center is closed and people
Yeah.
are asked, what IV did I do years ago, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'd rather you focus on what can I write this morning
Yeah.
that'll make me feel better and in
Yeah.
a state of gratitude than
Yeah.
trying to figure out what we put in those IVs so you could try and find somewhere else to go to about that.
Totally.
I
Yeah.
understand that you felt it was a big part, and it
Mhm.
likely is a part of your healing process.
Mhm.
But I think the bigger part is what's going on up here in your head, right? Or here in your
100%.
heart.
Yeah.
That's real healing
Yeah.
right
I
there.
mean, we were even talking before we started, like, I have had this little pain in my gallbladder, liver. I
Yes.
don't know what it is. And I'll eat something and be like, and it's so funny how quick we are to go to the worst. Like, oh, what if it's
Yep.
this? What if it's that? What am I dying? And I'm like, wow, Jamie, come on, rein it in. Like,
Mm-hmm.
sure, something's going on. I'll address it. Maybe I need to do a little liver flush, a gallbladder. Who knows what I need to do, right? But putting it in its right place of I'm okay, I'm alive, I'm well, I got through a situation years ago. I'll get through something again. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
putting things in the right place, I think is so, so important. And there's so much fear in our world right now. It's easy to just fall into that anxiety, that fear place very quickly if we're not careful. And I know I have to be careful of that because I can tend to go there quick if I'm not watching what my thoughts are doing.
Yeah, we all can, right? And again, there's no single person out there that doesn't feel some sort of fear, doubt, anything. I think when you're a little bit more aware of these things, you just try and curb it a little bit. It doesn't mean don't ever go on social media. It means don't doom scroll for hours at a time on
Yeah,
everything bad in the world.
yeah,
There was a time before that sort of information could ever get to you, and people just lived on what they saw outside. And for the most
yes.
part, I think it would be good. If I step outside right now into the street, I think people are doing all right, right? They
Hmm.
smile, they say hi usually,
Yeah,
and the sun is still shining. Things are well in that
yeah.
respect. So in my world that I see, things are good. And that's all we have to kind of do. And of course, if we go into a digital world where people are trying to fearmonger, that could lead us into a state of mental disease, and that leads into physical disease. It's all wrapped up, as we know, in this holistic bubble of who we are, mind, body,
Yeah,
spirit. But I
yeah.
think it's great to hear from someone that's so positive, so full of faith that you still have those thoughts. It's not
Yeah.
that you're just never having that.
No,
That's not
no,
realistic. That's
that's
not
not
right.
real.
And
Yeah.
you went through disease and are able now on the other side to bestow that kind of that train of thought, that attitude of gratitude onto others.
So let me ask you a question because
Oh, please! I love it
I've
when
been
the
doing these
interviewee becomes the interviewer.
yeah, these Instagram lives, and I've been asking, like, so you've read the book, what is sacred surrender? What does surrender look like to you? Or the tagline is the practice of waiting well with God. Like, how do you wait well?
It's really interesting because I read this book right around the time I was going back and reevaluating another book that I loved from years ago from Dr. David Hawkins, Letting Go,
Yeah, you
right? The
had me read
technique
that
of
years
letting
ago.
go.
Yeah.
And they were both so on par. And it was during this time where I was going through my own stuff, a center closing, mishaps with opening another center in LA, people angry at me, and all these things. I was like, oh my goodness, like my life is over, right? This is all I knew for 20 plus years, and suddenly it's all falling apart, I felt. And so I was reading both of these books, and I think on one end, you had someone like Hawkins, who's a psychologist and very kind of science based, but also getting into this spiritual element.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you had the sacred surrender, something that was, again, something of a higher cause, a connection to God, this faith based sort of side into surrendering. But both we're speaking, slightly different words, same language in the universal aspect of it. And I really love that you brought it down to a place that I feel most people can actually lean into, right? To journaling a little bit more. Whereas I find Hawkins' work sometimes a little tough for people to read. It's, verbose,
Heavy.
and it has these psychological terms and kinesiological applications of how he found out you have to do this or that to let go. I find yours much more applicable and connecting because everyone goes through these things, right? It wasn't disease for me right now, but it was a very challenging spiritual time, I feel like, for me through that. And so to read this and to be like, okay, all is still well,
Yeah.
I still have a beautiful life. I could do something. I could lean into the next chapter instead of focusing on a chapter that I thought was supposed to be a certain way. So I think in reading that, it gave me a ton of hope. And I love that idea of not just surrendering it, but doing it in the sacred way so you're not alone, even when you feel alone, right? That you have that connection to something higher. So, and then it is this idea of like, does it have to happen tomorrow, Casper? Does a new venture need to open up, right? We talked about this. It was like, well, one thing's closing. It would be great if we could just put them right into the next thing. It's like, but yeah, God's probably like, no, no, no. Enjoy life a little bit, relax a little bit after this. Let it happen naturally. Don't force it. I know that too, that when you try and control a situation, expectations high, you usually get let down and suddenly you see the world as, oh, it's so negative. Why didn't this work out?
Yeah.
But when you go into that surrender, letting go attitude, things start to come back to you, right? So I've always done that, the ebbs and flows of life. I'm no better than anyone else. I have lots of faults, and I find myself sometimes in the negative.
Yeah.
But then I remember from the past and from my, techniques and all the toolkit that I have,
Yeah.
that this has always been good, right? It always ends up okay if I allow it to and let go and surrender. So I found, your book to really put that in terms that was so much more applicable and easy to understand for me, and just brought me back to that kind of core principle of, oh, I know this inside. And when I read it, it sounds true to me in the heart. So, and it is, I have to say, I think it should be a prerequisite for anyone going through hard times or
that.
at least Lyme disease and other diseases where it's tough. It's a tough start. And I feel like a lot of people don't know where to start and start looking outside for who's the right doctor. And yes, that's important. But start here with you and getting yourself ready and surrendering some of that so that you are most open to receive the best kind of care, the best healing journey moving forward.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad it blessed you. We used to joke years ago that we're going to write a book together one day. So who knows? Maybe when the new center.
I mean, you're already the author here, so this could be a follow-up to this. I mean,
could do all the testimonies of your patients or something.
I love so much about it that, yeah, it is sort of like, I think if ever there was a follow-up, it would be to the tip and techniques now going into a little bit of the nitty-gritty of like, continue on, right?
Yeah,
this was your
that's good.
first step into it. And now here are all the things you learned about living non-toxic, how to think, how to apply this technique, how to use faith with other things, right? And really start to live. It almost reminds me, I know you saw this, the course we came up with, Empowered Healing, all the years back, and all the little steps you could do to empower yourself more. So yes, when you are ready to write another book, I will give it a shot to write and help you out.
You got a few things on your plate right now. We'll wait.
A few, but yeah, I'll wait and we'll put that book out shortly. But I have to ask for you, what's next? You got this book out, your first. You have music. You got albums out. What's next for you spiritually and personally?
Well, we put out the book in October, and then in November we did a Sacred Surrender Deluxe Edition album.
That's right.
So that just released. But the thing I'm so excited about, besides taking the next 10 days off starting Friday, a total break for Christmas and New Year's, I am releasing for the first time. I'm calling it my passion project. It's something I have wanted to do
Ooh.
since I signed my first record deal at 24 years of age. And what we did, it's an independent EP, it's 5 tracks, is we got into the studio, producer hit record. I was behind this gorgeous grand Yamaha C7. For those musicians out there, it's a gorgeous Yamaha grand piano. And we hit record, and I just got to, for I think the first one was like 30 minutes long, just sing and play whatever spontaneously was coming to my heart and my spirit and my mind. So I made up this kind of on the spot. It would almost be like if I invited you into my living room and I was just pouring my heart out, pouring my thoughts out, pouring my worship out to God, pouring my prayers out, their declarations, their what I would call like some prophetic thoughts that I hope help people. There's one called Be Healed. There's one called Be Still. There's one called Be Free. There's the last one called The Benediction. There's one called Find Hope. And we took that long kind of flowy time, the producer and I, we went through and we chopped it up into these 5 segments. It's nothing you would ever hear on Christian radio. It's nothing that, it's not commercialized in any way. We did some minor edits, but we didn't even do what you typically do on an album. You typically edit the life out of everything. We kept it raw. We kept it real. Even my voice, if it cracked at times, we kept those tracks. And then this was the most special part. We took a little break and we invited a small string section into the studio that day. We hit record on what I had recorded, and we just let them on the spot, a cellist, a violinist, a violist, we just let them play along and it is just some of my favorite music I've ever gotten to do. That they're kind of like lullabies. My vision for it is, say somebody is in the hospital, they would put on track 3, Be Healed, and they would hear me singing into Cancer Has No Place. You can, someone's anxious and can't get settled down at night. They would put on the anxiety one and just hear peace, peace be still, and it would just wash over them. So my prayer is it's like a healing tool for people, and that's going to release the end of February. And I think my next big music goal is a Christmas album, like a jazzy, classic Christmas album for next Christmas. But my new dream is just my wife era, my mom era. So I'm trying to take some time to focus on what needs to happen for that to happen. So,
yeah, you got to manifest that too. I know that's a big part of the book. And that takes time. Listen, I understand it too, as someone that, for 20 plus years was always looking for that person looking, and I had to change things myself and surrender, right? And that's a big part of it too.
Slow down a little.
Yeah. I mean, but it will come. You know it. You have that connection with God. He made you wait a little longer to make it that much sweeter. So it's coming for you. And I love that idea of that album. I can't wait to hear it because it's just so, like you said, raw authenticity that people crave. They don't want auto-tune and, 20 other people working on this to make it a little bit better and Photoshop it, so to say, right?
No.
This is what people need. And I think that is what is healing. It's the old way of just going directly with an instrument with the frequency of love and hope. So that's an amazing one as well.
It's going to be called Sacred Moments.
Love it. And it all ties in. Sacred surrender, sacred moments. Oh, that's so cool. I love that. Jamie, where can people learn more about you, read the book, connect with you?
Yeah. The book is anywhere you shop for books. Barnes & Noble stores have it. It's online at Barnes & Noble. It's on Amazon, books and such, all the things. So wherever you buy your books. It's also on the Audible if you like to listen. I got to go in the studio and record speaking the book, which was so fun. Music is everywhere. Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Pandora, Deezer, so wherever you listen to music. And I love to connect with people. I feel like I'm on Instagram and Facebook the much. I tried the TikTok and I'm too old for that. So Facebook and Instagram.
Me too, by the way. Me too. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. And I'd love to encourage you if you're going through it in any way and any of this resonates with you, please reach out. Even though I'm not officially working right now for
Yeah.
the
No,
center, I still want to encourage people. So
you've been the main ambassador of hope for so many people with us, and I just want to thank you for that. And also say that I just get so proud and elated when my release radar shows you on there. I remember one time just listening to, I'm like, I know that voice. And I was like, oh, it's Jamie. That's amazing. So you're impacting so many. I think all of us owe you a great deal of gratitude for that. So thank you for all your work.
thank you, Casper. So fun to do a podcast on sacred surrender with
Always,
you. Thanks
always.
for
We'll have
having
you
me.
on shortly for your third one and keep this conversation going.
Okay. Well, thanks again. It was so fun chatting with you about this.
You as well, Jamie. And to all those listening, visit Jamie's website. That's Jamie Jam, JAIMEJAM.com. And we'll include all the social media platforms, Spotify, Apple Music in the show notes. Until next time, keep writing your own healing story.